Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics. It's not only election season at the presidential level, it's also at the municipal level. And the hottest election in the state is right here in St. Louis about the earnings tax. And joining us to discuss both sides of the issue today is David Jackson, head of the Gateway Group. Very glad to have you here, sir.
Thanks for having me, Scott.
And returning back from working for Hillary Clinton in New Hampshire and all over the globe, first time in our new studios, is Ann Schweitzer, and it's Vote Yes on Prop E campaign.
That's right.
You're favoring the earnings tax, right?
Yes, I am.
Why?
Well, for me, I make a salary of about $50,000 a year. That's 1% of my salary goes to the earnings tax. That's the same as someone who pays $1 million a year. The earnings tax makes up about a third of our budget in the city and funds crucial city services like fire, police, things we really need to make sure our city is strong.
So, David Jackson, you've been part of a long-term effort to have this discussion. You actually brought about this vote, so citizens have a say in it. Why are you for getting rid of the earnings tax?
So I think there's a couple reasons, and I think it's important to note, I think all of us care about St. Louis City. We all want it to thrive.
Sure.
It's a matter of figuring out the right structure to make it thrive. So my dad grew up in St. Louis City, grew up on Shaw. My grandpa was a union worker for General Motors on the line. I bought my first home in St. Louis City, but have since seen the property value decrease 60% in 5 years. And so this hits home to me, and I think we have to find a new solution. And I don't think that the earnings tax is fair. I think if we look at this, as Ann mentioned, this is a flat 1%. So if you take a single mom making below the federal poverty line, she's paying the same percentage on that tax and being penalized for living or working in the city of St. Louis than a corporate CEO or a partner at a law firm. And that partner at a law firm may potentially have some type of exemption or a TIF or some type of special deal to stay whenever that homeowner doesn't.
Ann Schweitzer, does the earnings tax cost the city of St. Louis business?
I really don't think it does. I think it encourages businesses to come here. For example, we have one of the best startup scenes in the entire country here in St. Louis. That's largely made up of people who don't make a lot of money. So they're paying 1% on their earnings as opposed to transferring that tax. Now the building they work in is more expensive or something like that happens, because we will have to figure out a way to replace this tax if we do get rid of it.
So I think a lot of people believe, and when you talk about why the St. Louis doesn't grow, it's more, I hear more people talk about crime than the earnings tax. If you take away the earnings tax, how do you replace that money for police?
Well, I think that's an important discussion because nobody in their right mind wants to get rid of police and fire.
Yeah.
If you're going to make a tough budget decision,
Especially in the city of St. Louis, though.
if you're going to make a tough budget decision, I don't think any leader would be doing their city justice by taking police and fire as the first thing out of their budget. And so I think that's important to note. But this has to be a group discussion, and that's why this ballot initiative has, a 10-year phase out. To make those discussions, alive and try to figure out the best solution. But I commend Mayor Slay. I think Mayor Slay has at least come out initially over the last 5 to 10 years and said this tax is a disincentive to work and live in the city, and it is a potential problem in a lot of areas. But we have to work together and find a solution, and that's what this whole discussion is about.
So would you support a way to replace that revenue somehow?
Yeah, we have to find a way to replace it. But I also, I think we have to recognize the fact that as you lose businesses and you lose residents, you also risk losing earnings tax. And every time that you bring new revenue in, if you don't have that 1% tax, that 1% barrier or disincentive to work, live, or own a business in the city of St. Louis, and you have new people coming in, that also brings additional revenue towards the city.
So there's been a long-standing thing in Jefferson City that it's there was a good relationship between the city and the state. That seems to be fraying. And a wise old party elder in the Democrat Party told me once that if you continue, don't give the mayor a gun docket, you don't help him with the Ram Stadium, you take away his earnings tax. At some point, the mayor's going to bring bankruptcy papers to the state capitol and say it's your problem now.
That's a really interesting point, and I kind of wonder if people want that for some reason. I don't understand that at all, especially because this is not a small amount of our budget. This isn't trimming fat. This is cutting off our legs, getting rid of the earnings tax. We're talking about 33% of our budget. This is huge. People use the city of St. Louis for all sorts of things besides just buying houses. You come in and you're working here all day. You need fire protection and police protection as well. Should that be shouldered completely by the residents of the city of St. Louis? I would argue no. I think people who come in and use the city services and benefit from coming in and having this metropolitan hub need to be paying their fair share as well, which is why it is a tax on people who both live and work in the city.
But people also have, if you look at other cities across the country and the state. People are using city services in over 800 cities across the state, in over 15,000 or 20,000 cities across the country, and all those cities have legs, all those cities have structures, and all those people have tourism, they have economic activity, and there are other ways to fund city government.
We are far from alone as the only city that has an earnings tax. I mean, Philadelphia's earnings tax, for example.
And they're doing great.
A great
Detroit's
city.
doing great.
I mean,
let's look at the cities that are doing great and the people that penalize working income and the people that are trying to get rid of it. A lot of those other big cities are trying to reduce their earnings tax or their city income tax, and
This is talking about getting rid of the earnings tax. We're not talking about reducing it. This is a 10-year cut of
that's a good question, though. Okay, that's a good question. If we let's say that Tuesday's election and people decide to keep the earnings tax, or let's say that you had to put a different proposal out there for reduction. What's the best way to, if you don't eliminate it, what's the best way to attack this problem?
Maybe people who don't make a lot of money should be paying less than earnings tax. Maybe that's something
So you
to
support
discuss.
making a break for, say, minimum wage employees shouldn't have to pay earnings tax?
I support having that on the table much more than giving.
Let's make that part of the discussion, because
that should be
because
part,
it's
but
not
right
fair
now
for the
it's
working
not part
poor,
of the
right?
discussion.
So what's the next part of the discussion, though? If the earnings tax goes away, where you've mentioned other cities are looking to reduce theirs. What are other cities doing, and what would you be interested in discussing as a way to fund? Because if you don't fund the police department in the city of St. Louis, how do you? I don't think it's really possible to grow the city, right?
So I think that you have to look at a variety. Again, one, you have to rely on growth. And two, you have to look at a variety of things from public-private partnerships. You have to look at a variety of other service taxes. There's a variety of other ways you can fund your government, but it doesn't. We have to look and see at best practices across the country and see what other cities are doing. And this can't be a single decision that any one person rolls out and says this is exactly how you replace it. This is leadership. You have to make tough calls. And if you're in a city that's not growing, we have to work as a region. And I think that there are a lot of people, including the state legislature, that is more than willing to sit down and work with Mayor Slay and leaders in the area and say, what's the best way we can help grow as a region?
Mentioned Mayor Slay, huge week for the mayor, right? Recruiting, big week for Senator McCaskill, Senator Blunt, but Mayor Slay looks great this week, right? Bringing the NGA in. Does that change the conversation? I guess whoever the decision when it would have been used in this campaign, right?
Well, it didn't change the decision for them when they decided to be here knowing we have an earnings tax. So I don't think it really changes the discussion at all. It's great to have businesses come in, employees come in, people who are going to use city services and have them pay their fair share of taxes.
Are there any exemptions, though, for any of the NGA employees who don't have to pay the earnings tax?
I don't know that.
I think that's something we have to
And
look
that's
into.
something that's happened several different times, right?
And so that,
It's happened 8 times. There have been 8 businesses that have received incentives, and this isn't a handout.
Can you name 8 people, 8 single moms, or 8 people making minimum wage who have had exemptions?
I
that's a
can't.
problem.
These are for companies who bring in, say they're paying $100,000 in earnings tax one year. If they're going to, you create incentives for businesses like this. This isn't uncommon to cities across the country. You create an incentive that they are able to get a 50% return on any increment over.
Sure, but it's also not uncommon for other cities across the country not to tax income. And that's where I think, Scott, if you look at, say, a business who wants to, a law firm that wants to stay in the city of St. Louis, and right now they get an incentive deal where they keep part of the earnings tax instead of paying it to St. Louis City, and they get to upgrade their bathrooms and their deck or variety of their office space. What happens to the single mom that's making $30,000 a year or maybe below the federal poverty line that says that they want to put a water heater or a new heater in their house or air conditioning in the summer? Can they go to the city and say, what if I don't pay that earnings tax and I use that towards the air conditioner? There actually are programs for people who
don't make a lot of money to do improvements on their house.
So there are exemptions for the earnings tax for people who put air conditioning in their house.
But there are other things. I mean, we're acting like this is the only tax stream that the city of St. Louis has. If I'm a single mom, my biggest concern, if I own a house in the city of St. Louis and I'm paying an earnings tax that I've been paying the entire time I've lived here, say I lose my job, that earnings tax goes away. But you know what doesn't? Property tax, sales tax. These are not taxes that we should rely on.
But speaking of things that do go away, we're kind of running out of time here. I want to thank David Jackson, who will be on the ballot on Tuesday as well, right?
I will.
Lake St. Louis, right?
Yes, Lake St. Louis Fire Board.
Not only are you not wanting to cut service, you're trying to help Adam, right?
That's right. That's right.
Ann Schweitzer, very glad to have you back. We hope you'll be back in this very interesting election season. Congratulations on your work all over the country for Hillary Clinton.
Thank you.
Glad to have you back in Missouri.
I'm glad to be back.
Well, thank both of you for being here. This Tuesday is the municipal election in St. Louis. Hope you'll vote, and we'll see you right back here for our Opinion Maker panel after this, our Missouri Leading Economic Indicators.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, the heart of Missouri.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
Welcome back to our Opinion Maker panel. First with Mike Kelly, head of the Kelly Group. And no, you did not just stay out too late last night. You're on the right channel, 11 o'clock, and also the host of Hancock and Kelly on Fox 2. Good to have you.
Good to be with you.
Crystal Brinkley, the head of the Missouri Democratic Party. Glad to have you back.
Thanks for having me.
Dave Spence, businessman, civic leader, former candidate for governor. Good to have you here.
Thanks, Scott. Happy to be here.
Representative Ron Hicks, running for mayor of St. Peter's on Tuesday, right?
Yes, sir.
And back here on This Week in Missouri Politics. Let's start off with the e-tax in the legislature. Does it pass?
I think it does. I think
So
it
they
does.
ban the earnings tax from the state capitol.
I think so.
Dave Spence, do you think the earnings tax inhibits growth in the city?
I don't really think so. I think it sounds great in theory. Of course, everybody would like to pay for your taxes given a choice, but you better have an alternative. It's $160 million. And that's a lot of police, fire, safety, roads, everything that needs to be paid.
Michael Shaw Kelly, elder Democratic Party wise man. The earnings tax, if it goes away from the state capitol, does that create more tension here between the city and the state?
The Capitol, and it's the part of the hypocrisy that comes from the Republicans, is they talk about local control. Well, the earnings tax is being voted on Tuesday, and that's where local control will be decided. The legislature trying to act independent and take away a third of the revenue overnight from the city of St. Louis just speaks to the backward nature of what's going on in the Republican Party in Jeff City.
Crystal Brinkley, when I think of what keeps the city of St. Louis from growing, I more think of crime.
Sure.
This will make it harder to fund police, right?
That's exactly right. It's definitely, you want to entice businesses to come to your state and to your city, and, proposing a potential revenue source and cutting that's going to take away, your police officers, your firefighters. That's not an incentive, in my opinion.
But we wouldn't be talking about how to grow the city of St. Louis if it wasn't for this proposition, all right? I mean, there is some good of it, right?
I mean, hypothetically speaking, yes. But again, I think that's a huge incentive that businesses will look at if this thing goes through.
Let's talk about another hypothetical, Michael Kelly. SJR 39, it would put a constitutional amendment on the ballot to say that businesses like bakers and photographers don't have to perform services in gay weddings. Had a big backlash from the business community this week. I want to see if by chance you had an opinion.
Yeah, it's a monumental backlash that's coming from the Republican Party. From the business community against the Republican Party. This is usually the party of business. Yet business is standing up taller than ever, more united than ever in saying stop the hatred and bigotry coming from Jefferson City, which is going to impede bringing jobs to the state of Missouri. How much more do we need to witness than what we're watching happening in Georgia right now and North Carolina? This backward thought process that's a major part of Missouri's legislature is taking us in the wrong direction. And now even the business community and the Chamber of Commerce is having to tell Republicans that this is bad for business. It's despicable.
Dave Simmons, when I think of Republican business leaders, I think of people just like yourself. What is your opinion on it?
I think it's ill-conceived. I think it's chasing the boogeyman. It's totally not necessary. They're trying to turn back the clock, and it is a waste of political capital, and it's divided the Senate. It could divide the House, and I just think it is totally unnecessary. And I think with everything going on in our state, this is our biggest issue. I mean, come on.
Well, Ron Hicks, you're a representative that always has the Chamber of Commerce thinking you're with them. What's it like to look on the other side and see them there?
This is a real touchy situation, especially with us being, my family owns a bunch of restaurants, and we already felt we had the right to refuse service to someone if we need be. But I'm going to go against a lot of the people on this panel, but I can see the reasoning for it at the same time, though. I don't want to be forced to have to do something that I don't want to do in the same note. So.
But are there really people that, nobody's been able to say, here are the 5,000 people that have been affected by it.
And I can agree with you there, because no one has come to me and said, hey, and I get
use that time. Why not debate about bringing jobs to the state, right? How to make our state more business friendly.
And to further codify it with a constitutional amendment.
Yes, I'm not sure it's something that needed to come up.
This is something you're trying to put into our Constitution.
Crystal, would it change the politics of this if there was a cake baker in Belton that was sued over this? If there was somebody that had been sued over this, had to pay some money to somebody else, would that change it if this actually had happened somewhere?
I mean, potentially, but again, let's use the time when you're in Jefferson City. Let's use it to talk about real solutions to real problems. This is not a real problem.
Right. I think this is a first-time senator in Missouri trying to make a name for himself for the religious right, and I think that's fine and great, but we have much bigger issues in our state, and we've got to get growing again. We are 48th in economic growth, and we're talking about this issue.
You're exactly right, Dave, and what's even more troubling is to watch the entire Republican caucus line up behind something that's so divisive when there are important things like infrastructure and job growth to be focused on.
Now, Ron, I believe the Speaker, Todd Richardson, has at least taken a measured approach to this. There was a lot of pressure for him to just rush this through. They've at least slowed it down to go through the committee process next week. There's been a bit of a measured review of this, at least, right?
Correct, yeah. There is a good measure to it, and I'm glad for that, too, because as you can hear, you can see the differences here. This isn't something we should just jump right into, and this is going to hit a committee that I actually sit on next week, so I'm very curious, and I'm very open-minded. I still want to hear everything. We still need to hear both sides.
Does this get amended where it has to go back to the Senate?
I can see it being tried, yes.
Dave Simmons, if this goes to the ballot, does it pass?
I don't know. It would be the biggest waste of money and effort in the history of our state to put it on the ballot. I think it needs to just go away, and we need to concentrate on infrastructure, education, crime. We need to get our reputation back in St. Louis and in Missouri, and we are wasting time with this unnecessary bill.
Crystal, if they amend this just to affect the clergy, where a member of the clergy can't be forced to perform a gay wedding against their will, does that pass?
Scott, doubtful.
Really? I mean, this will drive turn on both sides, but there's a chance of passing, right?
Well, I'm with Dave. It's a colossal waste of time and effort. I mean, this is decided law in our country. Our Supreme Court has ruled on this, and we're constantly wanting to go back and nick at pieces of it, which ultimately are going to wind up back in court receiving the same treatment it's received to this point. Don't we have more important things to be focused on in Jefferson City than dividing people in our state, Scott?
It looked like the court may have stepped in too quickly. This issue, equality, as the publisher of the first paper in rural Missouri to come out for equality, I personally believe that legislatures all over the country were fixing this. Mayor Slay was leading on this. The court stepped in and made a decision that seemed to be unnecessary. This issue was moving towards where they wanted to go anyway. Maybe these are the backlashes of that.
I think most people who've always been on the wrong side of a court ruling feel that way, that a wrong ruling was made and it was unnecessary. Look, it's established law.
Unnecessary,
we have
right, no.
important things that we need to be focused on in this state. We have policing issues that we've been talking about. That's been pushed to the back burner. We have revenue needs. We have infrastructure needs. And this is what we're wasting our time on in Jefferson City. It is important that the people of Missouri and the viewers of your show understand that they're not tackling the hard issues down there. They're trying to divide your family, your neighbors, and your friends, and it's just wrong.
Well, Chris, let's talk about something everyone is focused on. That's a presidential race. You ran the Hillary Clinton campaign in Missouri.
I did.
She started losing some of these caucuses. Is it a caucus issue or is it a candidate issue?
Elaborate on that for me.
So she's lost caucuses in Alaska, Hawaii, Washington. She's won primaries like that in Missouri.
Sure.
Does she have a problem as Bernie Sanders just doesn't go away, does he?
You know, I from a party perspective, Scott, you know, we as the Missouri Democratic Party are ready to unite behind our nominee, no matter if it's Senator Sanders or Secretary Clinton. I think from a delegate perspective, I think Secretary Clinton clearly is in an advantage and has received more actual votes. You know, so I guess I'm a little confused
Mike
about
Kelly,
what the issue
the
is.
proletariat probably is ready to unite behind Bernie Sanders against the bourgeoisie, correct? But it is odd. The guy just continues to, it's almost scary that half of the Missouri Democratic Party is socialist.
Let's take this in contrast to what's happening on the other side. We all will admit, hold on a second, we all will admit on the other side.
Yeah,
there we go.
Please, guys, hang on.
He just talked about all the enthusiasm for Hillary Clinton.
There's several different streams of thoughts on the Republican side. We have a Democratic side, while we differ in the way that we want to accomplish things, shares some of the same principles. Look, Bernie Sanders is touching into a base. I heard that a lot about Donald Trump. He's motivating Democrats. But what's different is that Bernie Sanders, when he's not the nominee, will be standing there helping Hillary Clinton, and so will her supporters. That's not the dialogue we're hearing on the Republican side. So as you want to point out the differences inside the Democratic Party, it's really splitting a fine hair because it's subtle. There's those of us who are supporting Hillary Clinton who have progressive objectives that we want to see get done, and we have those of us who are supporting Bernie Sanders who have progressive objectives who are willing to lose just fighting for them.
Dave Spence, is it a subtle difference when one's a socialist and the other one has a subtle difference with him? Is that not frightening for the country?
First of all, Crystal, you know, I talked off air. I think the Trump phenomenon and the Bernie phenomenon are the same phenomenon, where people are tired of politics as usual. So, you know, obviously different philosophies. I think you're seeing a backlash and people getting involved who sat on the sidelines and saying enough is enough. And, you know, it sounds like Bernie saying that, but because he said that on the stump. But it really is interesting is you feel a lot more passion this time on both sides. People are saying, you know, I'm just not going to sit back and take it anymore. And so, you know, obviously the media seems to be just absolutely obsessed with Donald Trump, and you can tell by his $2 billion worth of free publicity. And I think you have to let the dust settle a little bit. Wisconsin's coming up on Tuesday. That'll be a critical vote. Then New York and some other things. It will be very interesting. It looks like, by all indications, Hillary will be the nominee. I still think it is way up in the air on the Republican side. And I think it'll crystallize, on you using your name. Once, I think you almost have to give about another 6 weeks.
Speaking of crystallizing, Crystal, is there anything as openly corrupt in modern politics as the superdelegate process in the Democratic Party? It is ridiculous. How could you?
How do you really feel about it, Scott?
To me,
don't hold back.
No liberal media would let the Republican Party get away with this. It seems to be the Democrat Party, and one of the things I respect about it is they would think something like this is ridiculous and call it out. Is this the last year of superdelegates?
I am in no way, shape, or form in a position. I mean, we can contact the Democrat or the DNC to comment on that. It is a complex process, I will say that, and it does take some educating of our constituents out there that want to participate in the process. But you know, we look forward to it.
Mike Kelly, you can't support a superdelegate process.
I do, of course. It was born out of the 1968 election, and it gets inclusion from all of the states. And the reality is, for someone to sit here and criticize it, absolutely, to criticize the process that the Democrats have, watching the circus on the other side, is absolutely absurd. Look, we have a system in place that, one, gets our delegates the voice in the process, gives rewards to those who are serving in office. A superdelegate's like a Claire McCaskill. It's a DNC person, a person elected to the DNC. These people have earned their part in a party process to participate in the superdelegate process and the delegation process of nominating the Democrat. It's exactly the right kind of process we have. I think that my friends on the Republican side wish they had it right now.
Dave Spence, if the Republicans segmented the proletariat, so Claire McCaskill got to vote in that election, then they set the bourgeoisie superdelegates, people would come apart, right? I mean, it is almost undefensible to have people getting these extra accounts against what the public gets.
I guess my question is, are all these superdelegates also contributors to the Clinton Foundation?
Ron Hicks, on the Republican side, you know, as somebody that I think there's a lot of merit to some of the things Donald Trump says. And then I think some of the other stuff he says is indefensible. Now, people make gaffes, but is he reaching a tipping point when he got on abortion?
Oh yeah, I think he's in trouble when he got onto that point right there. Some of the things that he said, even myself, as you know, in the past was a Trump supporter and things, and even when he said, I cringed myself and was like, oh.
It was his Todd Aiken moment, I think.
There you go.
Dave Spence, you've been a businessman that ran for high office. You've faced some of the scrutiny. It's tough. Can he hold it together under this spotlight going forward?
It's interesting. I think if Donald Trump in this room, we'd have a fascinating conversation.
Sure.
The problem is there is running for president, which is a job in itself, and then you have to lead. He's not doing a very good job at this point running for president. I keep expecting to wake up and hear say, "Oh, there's the Donald Trump we all want it to be, very presidential, very very measured in his words."
What about these
it
trade
just
deals?
seems reckless.
The trade deals. I mean, he's bringing up these trade deals, and I'm sorry, I know a factory that left West Butler County to go to Mexico. I haven't seen a factory leave Guadalajara and come to West Butler County yet. Are these trade? You're a businessman that deals all over the world. Do we need to relook at these trade deals like he's suggesting?
Well, I'm not sure that you can backtrack on some of them because they're legal entities. But I would say NAFTA was, when I still hear Ross Perot in my mind saying that giant sucking sound. And it was a giant sucking sound, but it was to Mexico was a speed bump on the way to China. And we have just thrown thousands and millions of jobs of hardworking Americans just recklessly say some other country take our job.
Mike Kelly, Donald Trump's giant sucking sound gets louder all the time. It's like he has these good ideas, he has this enthusiasm, but can you withstand these constant gaffes?
No, absolutely not. But hey, just buckle in. I mean, this guy has no way of controlling himself. He's got 6 months left of this. The more scary thing is that people are just now coming to the realization that he said some crazy things about abortion. I mean, let's not forget that he ran around the country saying that the president wasn't born in this country. There was nobody standing up yet. This is an animal that the right wing of the Republican Party created. The chickens are coming home to roost, and you're going to have to deal with the consequences, which is Hillary Clinton's going to be your next president.
Angry people.
And you know what runs downhill? I'm sorry, but we are positioning ourselves to catch that wave when Donald Trump's at the top of the ticket.
That was certainly the case made this week by Missouri Democrats. We'll see how it goes. I do want to talk real quickly. This week, everybody at this here has been very kind to join us in our Barklage Cup work for the Epilepsy Foundation of Missouri.
I'm still not even sure what it is.
It was my first time too.
Well, Dave Spence has been very gracious to donate $1 to everybody that hashtag Barklage Cup.
I know.
And we had a couple of things we wanted to present. I think we have the picture, but we broke out the bolo tie selection.
Oh yeah, this is
so
big.
in honor of you and your generosity, we wanted to break these out as the official tie of This Week in Missouri Politics.
Yeah,
I want to thank you for all your work for the Epilepsy Foundation. Thank everybody here for participating. And if you want to participate, the finals are now. Go to MissouriTimes.com or Twitter #Barklage Cup, and we will see you next week on This Week in Missouri Politics.
This is a new style.
This Week in Missouri Politics, brought to you in part by Sterling Bank.